there's so much content out there about entrepreneurship, and that's often good, but often people think that they need to fit a certain pattern and they miss the things that are around them, family members that can help them, co-founders that might not fit the bill of a co-founder you might expect.
Yeah.
Well,
it's usually the weird ones that win.
It is.
Anyways,
it is a tails game, right? Like it is not an average. This is not the average game. And so, what I'd like to tell founders and entrepreneurs is that there are no rules in this game. There are no rules.
You know, hold on, I'll show you something. So this is the first book.
There are no rules. Amazing, amazing.
It's my only guiding principle for the book.
Yeah.
There are no rules.
But by the way, I loved about this book when you start with, here are some things that people said about Alex. That cracked me up.
Okay.
I like how, even when you started, I started watching your videos, you know, when you first came out.
Oh, no way. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And no, thank you. I mean, I learned a lot. And, you know, what attracted me to it is like, I don't have anything I'm not trying to sell you anything. Yeah. You know, I'm just talking. Yeah. And it's clear you have this demeanor about you that is kind of relaxed. And I don't know where that comes from, because a lot of founders are just sort of so high strung. And
honestly, I think it's just I have a worldview that most people don't share. And I think it bothers a lot of people. And so I don't talk about it as much because I just, but when I do talk about it, like I get the most meaningful messages from talking about it, which is just like, I believe in cosmic irrelevance. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, like the idea that like someone is famous or not famous or has status or doesn't have status, I just so wholeheartedly believe that in 4 generations, like I will be completely forgotten and no one will care. Mm-hmm. And I think that just like, it just takes a lot of the pizzazz out of like, special snowflake, you know, ism.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of the anxiety out of the day-to-day operations of a business, the upside and the downside. And I would say that I think a lot of people, this is gonna be a little bit of a side quest, but I'll wrap it around. So like, I think many people desire emotional or mental stability. And I think it's absolutely a prerequisite for being a good entrepreneur because there's just so many fires that come every day, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think people have difficulty with that because they don't define what it really means. It seems like a very amorphous thing, like emotional stability or mental stability. But like, what does that mean from a behavior perspective? And so I see that there's 3 components to it. So you have mental toughness, you've got mental resilience, and then you've got mental fortitude. And I'll define each of them. So toughness, I see as your fuse. How many bad things can occur in a row without you changing your behavior? That would be toughness. Mm-hmm. The next is, I'll go fortitude second, it's probably better. Fortitude is once you surpass your fuse of bad things that can happen before your behavior changes, how steep is that curve of your behavior change? Is it a little drop, or is it you go ballistic and need to go, you know, do heroin for 5 months? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, just like something completely crazy, right? So that's the second element of it. And then the third element would be resilience, which is like, okay, how quickly do you bounce back? So what is the time between baseline behavior, change in behavior, and then recurrence to the original baseline? Mm-hmm. And so if you think about those 3 vectors, to me, it's helpful so that I can think, okay, do I need to exhibit more mental toughness right now? Because the ideal scene is that just you have maxed mental toughness and so that nothing changes your behavior. Mm-hmm. But we are human and we are fallible and things do happen, right? And so if I am going to, you know, have my behavior change, then I want to think, okay, I want it to be as little of a steepness as possible in terms of my change, as little intensity. And then once I do notice that there's a change, then I need to execute resilience and say, okay, well, how quickly can I return to baseline? And so what's interesting about that is that all of those are behaviors rather than moods or emotions around it, because you can say, all right, well, I can still be upset about this thing, but if my behavior returns to baseline, then I can resume original function, which is going to disrupt minimally the system that I'm operating within, or that I'm a key role in making, you know, work. And so that's my little side quest. Mm-hmm. Coming back to that, I think what allows any founder is having some worldview. It doesn't have to be mine by any means, but like, I mean, I've seen super religious people who they're like, well, all of this is happening because God wants this to happen, and this is happening for me, not to me. Great, that's just as strong, maybe stronger of a worldview. But I think you should have some overarching
to couch the experience.
Schema. Yeah, exactly. That everything operates within, and I think that makes it significantly easier, because I think if you lack that, you become the center of your universe.
It's almost like a victim aspect of it.
Yeah, I can't believe this is happening to me, like all of that kind of stuff. It's not fair. This other company's doing better. They got this better funding or whatever it is. And it's just like, it just doesn't matter. And in either of those worldviews, like if you have the cosmic relevance worldview, it's like, well, none of us matter. And if you have the other one, it's like, well, the end game was never the achievement, but I am the end. I am the goal. Right. And if I am the goal, then all of these things happen through me, not to me. And so the idea is, how can I use these things to my advantage to get, if you have a God worldview, what the creator wants me to learn from them. But both of these things can either make it a null point or make you better. And I see that as, at least, I think, the worldview of more successful founders.
Fascinating. Yeah. That's a really interesting model of how to think about, just hearing you talk, I just see it in myself. Like there are breaking points I get to where my behavior turns into like sort of more addictive type behavior. Maybe I'll spend like too much time on Twitter or and I like catch myself like, what am I doing? Clearly there's an escapism aspect of there, and then how can you, and over time the resilience aspect started to get better, but you need to focus on it. And this idea of cosmic irrelevance is really interesting as a philosophy, because I think people see it as people see it as a sort of like a form of depression or something like that. But I think it is, when you read the classics, there's always, there's the sort of the religious worldview, there's the cynical worldview. And not in a negative sense. And there's also the nihilistic worldview, and not in a negative sense. I think when our age today, like people don't read philosophy because it just feels like it's useless. And in some sense, it feels like, Sisyphean task of like just like carrying the rock. I spent like 2 years in San Francisco. There's this like really crappy coffee shop that I would go to every Saturday, and we would read a philosophy paper, and we would just like discuss it endlessly. And it just understanding how people thought in the past have been hugely valuable, because I can also pick these mental models or ideas from different schools of thought. And the other thing, and maybe this is where we get into the 100 million money models. It's so, you make it sound so simple. In some sense, it is simple. It's sort of like Warren Buffett talks about, investing is about buying a business and holding it. Buying successful business.
Pick right. Pick right, and pick things that are going to be here in 100 years.
And pick the right price, and that's it. In your case, acquire customers that could pay for themselves in 30 days, right? The idea of an unkillable business. That actually is no one in Silicon Valley thinks that way. In Silicon Valley, there's this aspect of like, burn as much money as you can, capture as much market share, then at some point rug pull everyone. And actually try to focus on fundamentals, because the public market, we've seen this with Uber and other cases like that.
I love that fundamentals are just making money, but
exactly. So maybe give me your thoughts, reflections on that. What made you go your route, the sort of the more tried and true versus the Silicon Valley? Because I'm sure, Alex, 25-year-old Alex Hormozi could have easily gone to San Francisco and like went that route.
Well, so a couple of things. So one is, I never once in my whole younger life considered tech as a career path. No one I knew was in it. No one that I went to school with did it. So like, I only discovered it far later in my career that it was even like on the menu of options, right? And so, for me, coming out of college, it was just, I didn't have this big drive to like change the world or make some product. It was just like, I would like to not be poor. That would be great. And so that was kind of my judgment, was like, get a job that pays decently well. And so I did that. And then obviously, fast forward, here I am now in more traditional business, because that's what I kind of got into. But I do think that there's kind of two equal opposite perspectives on taking market share. And I think Silicon Valley focuses on one of them, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's probably the better way, but there's an equal opposite way of doing it. So one is that you drive CAC as down low as you possibly can, which I would imagine is more the Silicon Valley viral product way, right? The other way is that you drive LTV so high that you can outspend everyone else in the marketplace. And so, but it's still CAC to LTV, like it's still the same dynamic. And one of them, you just want to go to either infinitely low as it approaches zero or infinitely high that you can outspend everyone. Both of them fundamentally accomplish the same thing. It's just that most people, you can do this so much more from a product. I guess you could do both from a product perspective, but there's typically more marketing and sales that goes into the side. And I think it also depends on the scale that you're looking for. Like at a certain point, paid acquisition can get increasingly costly and inefficient.
And you get rock pulled by the Facebooks of the world often and all of that.
Right, and they change the algorithm when they know that you're making money, and so all of a sudden they just charge you twice as much for impressions, et cetera, et cetera. But like, it still worked very well because again, I do 80% of businesses in the United States or 78% are service-based businesses. So it's interesting because like a huge percentage of market share is Silicon Valley, but from a logo perspective, it's astonishingly few comparatively to the number of businesses that exist on basic fundamentals of charge more than it costs you and do it over and over again, right? And so I've lived more in that world of just always fundamentals, and so to the same degree, I've bootstrapped every business that I have, and I think that my end goal has always been freedom and maximum flexibility of options or maximum optionality. And I think as a result, that's shifted some of my decisions because I think to a degree, like, do you guys have VCs who back your stuff?
Yeah, we have a lot of VCs.
Yeah. And so if you have a bunch of VCs, like there's covenants, there's controls, there's voting, there's all this stuff, and not to say that maybe someday in the future I won't have that, but like that all felt heavy to me. And if I believe what I say I believe, which is that in 5 generations it won't matter, then I'd prefer to ride this ride the way I want to ride it.
Right. And okay, so can you introduce the 100 million money model? And it looks very simple. Why aren't more people doing it?
I think it takes skill. I mean, I think it just takes almost as much skill as, probably less skill than building a product that goes viral, but it takes some skill. And so fundamentally, I call it client finance acquisition, but basically it's that one customer comes embedded within it enough gross profit to pay for that customer, the cost of delivering to that customer, so CAC plus COGS, and CAC plus COGS on the next customer. If you can accomplish that, then, and within a 30-day cycle, then almost all businesses have interest-free cash available to them on a 30-day timeline, which is why I picked 30 days. Now, if you can get interest-free cash on a 90-day timeline or a 60-day timeline, then you could expand that same concept. But the idea is that at that point, cash is no longer a constraint to growth. You'll still have other constraints for sure, but at least cash won't be the constraint to growth. So how can you grow a bootstrap business like it's venture-backed with that kind of aggressive growth? You do client finance acquisition, which is accomplished through a money model, which is what I wrote the book about. And so like, we had a software company that we went from zero to like almost $2 million a month in 6 months. And that wasn't because we had a viral product, but because we knew we could outspend everybody. And that's what we did, right? And each of these businesses and like my gyms, I was able to fill up all my gyms before I opened the gym. And that's not something that's as common, a commonplace to do. And I would do those all in 30-day launches. And so that idea of, well, if we can just get the customers to pay for the next customer, then I just need to make that first sale. And then after that, I can spin the wheel as fast as my operational capacity can handle.
It's a flywheel.
Yeah. And then at that point, the only thing that's going to happen is, CAC's going to potentially go up. But if you have, tremendous LTV, then you're pretty much good to go still, even in that shorter timeline. And so all the stuff that I talk in here is basically 15 mechanisms that I use to try and pull cash forward with the customer so that we can accelerate the cash conversion cycle, so that we can ultimately remove cash as a limitation for growth, which I think from a Silicon Valley, VC-backed perspective, even on the low side, if you already have VCs, if you eliminate your burn rate, then you gain tremendous leverage.
Of course.
Right? And then also you can time your rounds so that like maybe this is a bit of a building year and you don't want to, you could grow faster, but it's not in the best interest of the business right now. And so it's like, okay, we're going to have a slightly lower growth year because we want to fix some of the fundamentals of the product. But if you are burning cash, then you could potentially get forced to raise a down round. And if you raise a down round, you're screwed and all the momentum's gone and it sucks, right? And so having these types of skills or tools in your back pocket, I think, can be tremendously valuable for a founder who's obviously bootstrapped, because that's how you can grow really aggressively. But even if you are somebody who has, venture backing, it can get you out of sticky situations.
Yeah. So I maintain full control of the company. It's not like I don't trust the VCs, but every round I was able to dictate the terms, partly because every round I raised it with, boatload of money still in the bank.
Yeah.
We're still like a money burning business, but we've been fairly capital efficient. And I think that's like the main leverage. Like you be, again, going back to how you want to spend your day, how you want to build your business, that kind of freedom. It's very easy to build a jail for yourself.
Yeah.
And
astonishingly easy.
It's very easy to be way unhappier as an entrepreneur than you were as an employee. There's a sense of freedom as an employee where, you clock out at 5 and you don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
But you can build a pretty miserable jail for yourself as an entrepreneur. What kind of businesses have you seen built with this model? Like, give me a story of someone that applied the recipe and was able to grow a business.
Oh, I mean, it's like any category you can think of that's like a traditional service business can use this.
Yeah. Plumbers,
HVAC, gyms, B2B consulting, agencies. Like, it works.
Yeah. But do you have a story of someone, like maybe give it like a personal story, like how did they get started? Or
2 kids wanted to start an agency for float tanks, which is just like a random niche to be in. And they read my gym launch book where I talk about this concept, not as elegantly as I do in this book, but I was like, hey, we run these 6-week challenges by doing that. And they were entering a float tank space where people were trying to get people on like $49 or $99 a month memberships, but the cost of acquisition was closer to 200 plus. And so they would have to wait 2 or 3 months to break even with gross profit in order to just recoup payment, which was really difficult for float tank owners that already had expended a ton of cash to open up these facilities. And so they came in and just met with a different offer, which was like a 6-week stress release thing. And so they, bundled in some mindset app and some like journaling and like a once a week touch base with somebody who just texts them. And by doing that, they're able to charge $600 on the first transaction.
So that's the attraction part.
Right. Yeah. And that was an attraction offer. And so they were able to do, they did a win your money back offer, but not off of like, losing weight or something. They just did it based on behavior. So if you do these, you attend twice a week for at least this period of time and you rate your stress levels between the beginning and end. If your stress levels don't go down by at least 2 out of 10, by the end, we would give you your money back, right? And that was the offer. And a lot of people were like, oh, that's pretty compelling. And as a result, they were able to, offset acquisition costs, and the model fundamentally worked. And so that's like an example. Like there's hundreds, like there's a zillion examples of this. If you were a dentist, it'd be the same thing. You do Invisaligns, and it costs you X to get an Invisalign. Person comes in, you make 3 times your money, and then after that, you get them onto the subscription, which for them is going to be cleanings and whitening, on an ongoing basis. And so almost every business can structure it this way. It's interesting because most businesses want to have a low barrier to offer thing, which I think is really good when you're talking about what the very first thing that someone touches your business from an advertising perspective, but not necessarily the first meaningful transaction.
Yep.
And so I come from the perspective that someone is taking action because they have some level of deprivation or some level of problem that they're trying to solve in that moment. And so I think people have very large amounts of motivation for very short periods of time. And so when they have these large, moments of motivation, we would like to capitalize on that with the largest transaction possible rather than the smallest transaction possible. And in so doing, get larger commitment from the customer. And if you structure some of the mechanisms that I talk about, it's like you can actually get them to be more likely to activate, even if you have a B2B software that's higher touch and have to integrate their their tech stack or whatever it is. You can put rebates in there so that they pay $5,000, but then they get $1,000 back if they do step 1, 2, 3, and then all of a sudden that 5x is LTV on the back end, but you still liquidate the acquisition cost. And so those are the variables, right, that we like to play with. And different businesses lend themselves to different things in terms of which structures, like buy X, get Y free works in some businesses and less so in others. A decoy offer or pay less now, pay more later offer, or win your money back offer or giveaway offer. Like there's all these different offer structures that work phenomenally well to pull cash forward and also generate a lot of leads, which is kind of the best of everything.
The sort of internet business mantra has always been low friction. And yes, there's an aspect of it that's very true. Low friction wins in many ways. But there's an aspect of it, like we've had many experiences at Replit where we find that higher friction leads to more conversion. because you're asking more of the customer upfront. That leads to more investment, and maybe a sunk cost feeling, but also it might set them up for success by putting in the work.
There's a great hypothetical extreme that you can take when you're like trying to explain this to someone, which is like, okay, well, if less friction were truly the answer, then we should just have ads that just are just like, buy here. And we know that that typically doesn't work.
Yes.
Right. And so if that's not true, or if it's just like, call this number right now and buy our thing for this amount of money, like that, we know that doesn't work because we don't see that happen very often unless it's super low cost consumer products, right? And so then it means that there's some level of friction that literally makes it more efficient to spend the money by adding friction. And so then the question, at least for me, when I think about marketing in general, is what is the sweet spot? And so that's what I think all marketers are trying to find. Is like, you want to find just enough friction that you can have as many people exposed to the ideal path to getting them to, to ascend or to activate.
Yeah, I love that. Reductio ad absurdum, right? Like if I find the most absurd case, and that helps you prove the point. And then the other parts of the funnel, the upsell, the downsell, and the continuity, they're all very important. One thing that we haven't done very well is the downsell. And like after reading about that, I'm just gonna go back to the office and just think about that. There's so many dark patterns on churn where like you hide the, I remember I subscribed to the Economist newspaper, and I had to call a number in England to cancel my subscrition.
During their work hours.
During their work hours. I was like, I'm never gonna recommend your magazine to anyone. But I think instead this idea of like, hey, well, okay, you didn't get the best value out of the service. Well, how about we give you we give you a plan that perhaps suits you better. Stick around longer. See if it works for you.
Something you might find really interesting. So we found this out when we did a big data analysis at Gym Launch, which is obviously B2B and higher ticket, but I still think that psychology works the same way. So we looked at all the LTV of all different customer segments across different service categories that we had. And the second highest LTV, the first highest is the most expensive thing of the best avatar, and sure, that was number one. But number two was the one that was super surprising me. It was very close to that one. And it was a significantly lower price point, but the churn was almost nothing. And what it was customers who had been proactively downsold. So not somebody who's going to cancel and then we say at that point, hey, let's downsell you because you're about to leave. But instead someone that you saw that they were not using the complete feature set, that there was a different service category that matched their exact usage case that cost less. And so our team reaching out and saying, hey, you're not using this element of the service. We have another service category or tier that literally uses 100% of what you're currently doing. If you want, I can go ahead and switch you to that. People were so like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, it generates such goodwill.
And then they just stuck. They just stuck. And I found that I always kind of like remember that, like we always have this fear as business owners, to like, I don't want to just, don't bother them. They're paying us, right? But like you can
pure margin. Not using it.
But sometimes it's like, but if you can just crush churn and triple LTV with that move, then like go for it. And also I think there's some element of ethics in there that how much word of mouth comes from that, how much good sentiment, reviews, all that kind of stuff, less measurable. But at least we could see LTV on those customers was the cohort that had the second highest LTV. And that was like, and it was at like less than half the price. So to me, I was like, that's really compelling and interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I could think of an example for Replit where some people build something, they deploy it, they're getting value out of the deployment, but they're paying the $25 and maybe that's a month and maybe they're not building every month. And so like downselling to say, hey, keep your deployments
maintain
online.
Your tool.
Maintain your tool that you built, but like you don't have to continue paying for the credits for the agent or the AI that you're not using.
And I wonder, because even the psychology, because like, I love the psychology behind this stuff, but like even making the offer that they could get some, let's say it's $15 or $10 a month, whatever. And then if someone says, no, I'd rather still have the optionality, it's almost like a reaffirmation that they're not going to, like I would bet you even having to make the decision that they don't want the downsell would make their current membership stick longer.
Fascinating. I'm going to do that and report back to you. See what happens. That's very cool. So let's get into AI a little bit.
I should be asking you the questions. I don't know.
So actually, not many people remember, but you were one of the first people to key in on ChatGPT as a tool for business.
Yeah.
And I remember some of your early videos.
It was like almost 3 years ago. Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was like a couple of weeks after ChatGPT was launched, right? And like, was it November 22 or something like that?
Yeah.
December 22.
Great
So,
memory.
yeah. And I was very interested because I always watch your world and I watch Silicon Valley world and I see like what is hopping over.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is going to be huge. So what sparked the interest for ChatGPT? What vision did it create for you?
I mean, I think that there's fundamental questions of like, what is it? So I'm such a like, what do I geek out on? Like, what do I really enjoy a lot is studying learning and behavior. And you can hear it through all my definitions and my business books. Like that's the through line that marries everything. And so then I mean, AI obviously begs the larger question of like, what does it mean to be human? Yes. And I think, and I have this philosophical slant to my own interest, and I think that's probably why I was drawn to it disproportionately. I also am a writer, and so language is a natural thing for me. And so the confluence of multiple these things together made ChatGPT really interesting. But just in like, we as humans tend to be very romantic about ourselves and thinking that like no one can do what we can do. And like we've been proven time and again that we're not as special as we think we are.
That fits in your
and that fits in my
irrelevance.
Yeah, so it's totally aligned with my worldview.
Yeah.
A lot of people are very upset by that, but with each thing that it proves it can do, because if artificial intelligence learns almost exactly the same way that humans do through reinforcement training, and so you do a thing and you get an outcome, yay or nay. And I believe at the most foundational level, when you ask the question like why are you so driven, or why are founders so driven, we have gone through some reinforcement training, which we may have been aware or not aware of, that reinforced this set of behaviors that when stacked together, so you see a skill as a behavior chain of multiple adaptive skills that are put in sequence to create an outcome that's maybe ideal, or that adaptive chain becomes a more complex set of behaviors that becomes a skill. Sorry. And so to the same degree, AI basically learns the same way humans do. And so if it learns the same way humans do, then it will be able to do what humans do.
Okay. Yeah,
right?
that's a very first principles kind of thinking, especially watching ChatGPT. It kind of sucked back then, but like being able to key on that was
it just keeps tweaking.
Yeah.
And so it obviously starts with just language, but then it just continues to move out. And I'm curious what you think about like Tesla is, because trying to clean data sets to train on larger and larger, big data that it's working off of. Obviously, that will have limits, and then creating high quality data will become the constraint of the learning. And so then it will have to learn from first principles itself, which is going to be experimentation in the world, which means that it has to have some sort of link to the real physical world, which is exactly how we learn.
Yes.
Right. And so we're able, like so everyone who feels like, AI is not as smart as humans, it's like, well, because we've had a learning advantage.
Yes.
Because we take 10,000 inputs a day or whatever the number is.
100%.
If we take all of our senses times, hours and whatever we can take in, as soon as we have robo babies, and I say that not in a weird way, but like where it can experiment and touch and taste and do all that stuff in the world, I think the reinforcement loops will happen so quickly. And the other part of it that will happen is that it doesn't forget. And I think that's the crazy part. So we've obviously trained AI for different functions within our business and business use cases. And one of the things that was astonishing to me is that we were trying to train an SDR, so sales development rep, who would do outreach or do follow up. And what was really interesting to me was that obviously the hallucinations are still a problem right now with it. And I think will always be a problem. I'm sure I don't know the French guy, but the guy who Google listens to, and he's some,
Francois Cholet?
Might be.
Yeah.
But he basically was saying that like LLMs will never truly get into AGI because if you have 3% error, it gets expounded, ad infinitum. And so,
he did moderate his view, but I'll tell you in a second.
Please, tell me. But one of the things that I found so cool for me though is that like, it would make a mistake, and I would, we'd be like, hey, do this next time. And immediate, and every time it would do that. And I was like, man, I've trained a lot of salespeople, like scary in a cool way of just how quick it can learn. And it just doesn't make a mistake after that. Obviously there's hallucinations, but in terms of following the directions, it would follow them.
Right.
And so if you, like, it's funny because there's a lot of like really cute isms in Silicon Valley, like, being a master is something that like some skills cannot be taught, only learned. Like there are these very cute like rhetorical devices, but they're just not, they'd make no sense.
Yeah.
like if you learned it, you learned it,
Yeah.
which means someone could teach it. It's just not structured.
Right.
And we didn't know how we taught it because there's multiple factors. But like if you control the conditions, you can control the outcome. At least that's my viewpoint of the world. And so it just means that there's more complex environments in order to learn. And so I think I've just taken a lot of interest in that because, the obvious of like ChatGPT enters Optimus or, Grok enters Optimus in the real world, it's like, oh, okay, well, it can interact with all the tools that we've already made around the world to interact with as humans and then never make a mistake after that. And then that just gets into lots of questions around existence and all that kind of stuff, which I enjoy.
I think you're spot on, perhaps more than you know, because even a lot of AI engineers would not understand what you just said, and even some AI researchers. So what happened is LLMs, exactly what you're talking about, train on the internet, right? Next word prediction, just like keep quizzing the AI about like, give it the title to a New York Times article, quiz it on the first word. If it's wrong, you change the weights. If it is right, you reinforce the weights and so on. And so that was the paradigm, and that's how we got GPT-2, 3, up to 4. That was the paradigm, train on everything. But that created all sorts of problems like hallucinations, and then we ran out of data. Like that's it. That's like a limited set of data,
right. Which is crazy to consider.
Right.
It's like what that even means.
But then the next paradigm, which is reinforcement learning, in the paradigm after that. So reinforcement learning from human feedback was the thing that created ChatGPT because it would get an answer and then there's a human that says, okay, that's not a good answer, generate it again. That's not a good answer, generate it. So it's just like voting basically based. And so that made it so that ChatGPT is a good chatbot. Now then the next thing is learning from experience. This is not a human annotating the feedback. This is actually experience with the real world. And this is what's creating really profound, good coding agents right now. Because the experience from the real world and agent is actually still a virtual world. It's a virtual machine where it's like writing the code and executing it and getting feedback from it. And now this is being applied to robotics as well. So, baby robot is exactly the right way to think about it. We're gonna go from this idea of like humans teaching it to more of it like touching and experiencing the world and growing from it. And by the way, this happened before. This happened with AlphaGo. The way they were trying to train Go is the game that no one was able to beat initially with AI. But AlphaGo in 2015 was able to beat it. And it was because they moved away from training on human data to having the machine play itself like 1 trillion times. And that it created an alien intelligence.
It started inventing moves that we'd never seen before. Really interesting.
Really artistic, creative moves.
When I started studying Alex Hormozi's teachings, I realized that what fascinated me most about him wasn't just his business intelligence, but his philosophy of life. He doesn't talk about wealth as someone chasing status, but as someone who has understood the true meaning of freedom. Alex Hormozi isn't trying to sell an image. He speaks with authenticity, and maybe that's why his words resonate so deeply with people who are searching for meaning in the chaos of entrepreneurship. Listening to Alex Hormozi, I understood something profound. The world of business has no rules. And when he says, there are no rules, it's not a call for chaos, but an invitation to liberation, freedom from the need to follow patterns that were never designed for people who create the new. He says that winners are usually the weird ones, those who don't fit the mold. And maybe that's why Alex Hormozi became a symbol of independent thought. He built empires, but what inspires me most is that he did it without bowing to Silicon Valley's ready-made formulas. Alex Hormozi talks about the concept of cosmic irrelevance, an idea that completely shifted the way I see life. He believes that in 4 generations, no one will remember us, and as harsh as that may sound, it's incredibly freeing. When I truly understood that, I realized that most of my anxiety and constant need for validation were just echoes of an ego afraid of being forgotten. Alex Hormozi teaches that by accepting our smallness in the face of the universe, we find a powerful peace, a calm that allows us to build, create, and live without the weight of trying to prove ourselves to anyone. For him, emotional balance is the real foundation of success. Alex Hormozi explains that many entrepreneurs fail not because they lack talent, but because they don't understand what mental stability really means. He breaks it down into 3 components: toughness, fortitude, and resilience. Toughness is your ability to keep behaving consistently when things go wrong. Fortitude is how you react once you finally hit your limit. And resilience is how long it takes you to return to your baseline after you fall. When I began applying this to my life, I understood why Alex Hormozi insists that success isn't about emotions. It's about behavior, about doing what's right even when it hurts. He also talks about having a solid worldview, an internal system that keeps you grounded when everything around you seems to fall apart. Alex Hormozi says you can believe in God, fate, or the universe, but you must believe in something greater than yourself. Without that, you become the center of your own universe, and everything starts revolving around the question, why is this happening to me? When I heard that, I realized how often I had played the victim in different moments of my journey. Alex Hormozi taught me that things don't happen to me, they happen through me. And that single change in perspective changes everything. He also challenges the grow at all costs culture. While most tech founders focus on burning cash and chasing investors, Alex Hormozi teaches the opposite, to grow based on solid fundamentals. He promotes a model he calls client-financed acquisition. The concept is simple but powerful. Each customer must generate enough profit to cover the cost of acquiring them, serving them, and funding the next customer. This model eliminates the need for loans or investors and allows the business to grow with healthy cash flow. When I heard Alex Hormozi explain this, I realized that real power lies in building companies that sustain themselves, not ones that depend on someone else's money. But what struck me the most was the purpose behind all of it. Alex Hormozi never set out to change the world, he just wanted to stop being poor. And maybe that's precisely why he succeeded. Because he never chased fame, he chased efficiency. He never sought the spotlight, he sought freedom. And with that simplicity and focus, he built a legacy far more durable than those who only seek to be remembered. Today, when I think of Alex Hormozi, I see someone who lives what he teaches, success as the reflection of mental clarity, discipline, and humility. The humility to accept that, in the end, none of this really matters. Paradoxically, once you understand that nothing matters, you begin to act with more courage, because fear loses its power. And that's what Alex Hormozi does to those who listen to him. He removes fear and replaces it with purpose. That's why, when I reflect on everything I've learned from Alex Hormozi, I realize that his greatest legacy isn't in his books, his companies, or his strategies. It's in the way he teaches us to think, to face pain, failure, and our own insignificance. He shows that true success isn't about building something that lasts forever, but about living so freely that time itself can't cage you. And maybe that's the real definition of wealth, the freedom to choose how to live, and the wisdom to understand that even if we are forgotten one day, it's still worth leaving a mark of purpose in the world, just like Alex Hormozi did.